natural evolution with my conversations with Jamaica, I thought, wow, this is the perfect time for us to come together and highlight a node between us, part of our natural network, and sort of turn up the volume on that and share this time. So really, just to say that this experience is the first time we're doing it. It's the first time that we're having this webinar with Bioneers and Avery, and conveners. So there's a lot of firsts, and really the heart behind it is to name how we all, as conveners and as transformative experience holders, weavers, are being offered an opportunity to look at what nature can teach us about networking. Sorry, I have the sound in the background a little bit. So if you can't hear me, just ask me to repeat. So we're really excited about shining a light on how networks and collaboration, something that we're all involved in convening, is really actually just opening up to wisdom that is inherently present within ourselves as we are nature expressing itself. So my excitement, and as an educator, as someone who worked at Bioneers with a lens of how to make that convening and that event much more inspired by the natural wisdom of the land, the place, and all of the participants, generally speaking. So again, turning up the awareness and the volume there. And really what is offered to us is this opening up of the dialogue and the conversation as inspired by that event, but also by all of our collective intention. I just want to pause because something's occurring to me to make sure that everyone on this call knows what Bioneers is. So first, let's just say that Bioneers is an organization that convenes people, thought leaders together for one major event. So all of us on this call are event holders. So just to speak to the event, it holds one major event in the autumn, in October, for 3 days in Marin. And it hits the entire spectrum from how, what our solutions are according to the natural environment, to social justice, to Indigenous wisdom, youth leadership. It's a very wide spectrum that's based and built on a foundation of recognition that nature is our strongest teacher. So revolution from the heart of nature is its perennial tagline. It's also an organization that operates all year round with a radio series, an incredible radio series actually, and develops resources for educators and other organizations to draw from and use ongoingly. I'm just going to pause and ask everyone to mute themselves, if that's possible. And then I wanted to check in and hand it over to you, Jamaica, to see if what I've said, sort of stream, is encapsulating our intention for the day. And if you want to add anything.
Yeah, thank you, Emily, and thank you to all you conveners who helped organize this. I really appreciate all of you also being on the line this morning. I know it's early here on the West Coast, and it's really an honor to get to have this dialogue. And I think that's one thing that Emily and I wanted to bring in, is that this is a very emergent, even as it's very ancient, kind of approach for us to consider and look at how are we becoming more coherent, more effective, more woven and interdependent, and also honoring the flavor of diversity that each of these organizations or each of you as individuals are bringing. How do we gather this body of collective wisdom and intelligence and actually leverage that right now at a time when we need to find more global coherence and even more local coherence and more organizational and interorganizational coherence. So, I think our intention today is to let this be an example of an emergent space of wisdom, which both Emily and I strongly believe is a very vital part of a reframe in how we work together and how we look at our organizations. So that, I think, is our intention. And we're just really happy to be here in this dialogue. We're going to lead you through some guided practice. I know Emily's going to arc the day here in a minute, so we just invite you to take the journey with us, and mostly to drop into your own deep listening. Even as Emily and I are the ones that are conveying some of this, we really want to evoke the fact that all of us have inherent wisdom, and part of what we're here to do is create the space, for this natural co-sensing and co-intelligence to emerge today. So thank you for being with us in this play.
Thanks, Jamaica. Great. And just to say again, we, Jamaica and myself, we are educators, conveners, weavers, and we want to recognize that on this call is a wide spectrum of knowledge about biomimicry as an emergent science, as a tool, as a perspective, as a as a return to our ancient wisdom and a way of infusing how we operate together and how we share really what's possible for the human species, what edge we're leaning up against, that we are drawn to it as questioners and learners as much as anything else. And we just are excited to be able to hold this space to start to seed more deeply the conversation. So the arc of this hour is we will be, we've looked at, we brought together why we're here. So for those who are just joining, you'll get a sense of how this webinar came to be, with Bioneers, the Conveners Network, and Re-inhabiting the Village coming together as the holding body for this, which is a network and a collaboration of itself. We will then be doing a brief guided journey to really open up to the inherent wisdom that part of a biomimetic worldview. This is the key. And then we'll have some time to share information, to name what biomimicry is, open it up to the group and the group wisdom harvest in that way, answer some questions, and then look at what will be next steps leading out of this webinar. Again, if you have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat window. It's a very open space, and really we're just trying to get to an exciting dialogue with one another. Does anyone have any questions right now before we begin or go any further? No? Great. Okay, so for me, biomimicry wowed me about 15 years ago when I saw Janine Benyus speak for the first time. Janine is in our culture, the Western kind of modern culture. She is the person who brought it to the fore of, my understanding is that Janine Benyus put biomimicry on the map, so to speak, in terms of those of us who are living in a modern scientific world and experience. And I say that, I put that strong caveat there because this science and approach is truly the most ancient wisdom that we can find. It's almost awkward for me to talk about because it is ourselves describing something to itself, but it is really an essential rudder as we maneuver into solving some of the most important problems, the most essential problems that humans have created. So there's an opportunity that's held within biomimicry that, in my experience, is unlike anything else, which is really exciting because it offers us a space to reawaken to what is already inherent within us. And that's really my passion, my light bulb. As a transformative educator, I believe in creating the conditions within which we can awaken to what is actually so within our own true nature. And that's my vocation, that's my service. The work that I do at Bioneers is as a person offering that service into an organizational space and for a convening or a gathering. But I very much look at it as being an agent for the earth and for life, because with the greatest amount of humility that I can possibly share, this is not my knowledge that we're talking about here. This is the knowledge that we all carry. So what is the first step in that journey for me is to pay homage to that inner wisdom that for some of us, we have been on a journey for a long time in our lives and have been awakening to it in every possible way and every possible lens and look. So a deep foundation of knowledge is present within this circle. And then there are others who are just coming newly to the possibility and the practice of awakening to our own self as nature. So just to name that, within that whole spectrum, there's one, for me, there's one beginning reality, and that is we are the earth expressing itself. We are the natural world that we committed to, and so desiring of being in right relationship with. And so because we are that, really it's about awakening to that rather than imposing something upon it. So the best way that I know how to awaken to that is to actually quiet the mind in a short, and for the purposes of this call, in a brief, essentialized meditation. So I'm going to invite us all to enter into that space together with the intention of awakening or paying attention to that innate wisdom that leads us into the field of biomimicry to begin with. Okay, so if everyone can just settle in, we're going to put our feet on the floor and settle into our bodies. If it feels good for you to close your eyes, please do so. Take a moment to just close your eyes. I invite you and encourage you to do that. Letting out the breath that you have just taken in a long, deep exhale. And as you do so, really settling into that beautiful, strong structure of your sit bones. And if you are driving, let me say, please, take very, very, very strong care and just awaken to your body's power as you are sitting in your seat, whether that's stationary or in motion. And as you let out the next big exhale, imagine that beautiful spine of yours elongating down into the earth. And in the inhale, let's have the tip of our head just float just a little more gently skyward, honoring for a moment the vertebrae system that we have inherited from all of the swimming ones and the magnificent sea mammals that came onto the shore and gave us their genius that we're now embodying now. So let's just take 2 or 3 more deep breaths on our own time, really awakening that core, stable structure that is the spinal cord, connecting it to our feet and then down into the earth, and then also the tip of our heads as it reaches skyward. And in this meditation, what I would like us to do is to let the mind know that it does not need to work at all. You can just give it a break, thank it, and allow it to just go into a space of listening to a different kind of wisdom and knowing. Our intellect works so hard for us, so let's just honor it and let it go. The part that wants to figure things out. And drop deep into the center of our being. Deep into your belly. Continuing to breathe. What I invite you to do is to allow that breath to move anywhere it feels naturally drawn within your body system, You may notice you're drawn to your lungs as you're breathing in and breathing out. You may notice that your breath sits there in your belly as I've invited it to be, and it really wants to just settle there. Breathing, noticing the inflow and the outflow. Or perhaps your breath moves all the way out to your fingers and to your toes, awakening the tips of each digit. Just let your breath go where it wants to be, where it feels called. Now, in this next breath, let's go a little beyond the body, out beyond your skin, where you start to connect with the space as it surrounds you. You might notice the change in the air temperature as you do so with your awareness, as you pay close attention with this inner awakened sense. And now moving that breath down into the earth, that awareness, let it just travel downward. And with your imagination, you imagine that that wise breath is going into the earth, where you know it will find some beautiful systems of roots and perhaps seedlings that are dormant there. It will encounter endless numbers of organisms and beings. You don't have to know exactly what they are, just travel there with them, with that wise, intelligent breath, exploring. And then with your next in-breath, let's draw that energy back up through our feet, back into our bodies, where we encounter the magnificent system of our circulation, our circulatory system. Perhaps as you notice your feet in a different way, as you come into your legs, your knees, notice that there's something a little potentially more awakened as you come up through your legs, through your hips, and back up into your belly. That whole circulatory system is responding to your breath as you move up into your lungs again, noticing that there's a lightness and an openness to your airways that might not have been there before, that there's the bronchial system of your lungs. Now up into your head, traveling through your neck into that beautiful, beautiful head space where you encounter the incredible space of your brain, this beautiful, beautiful space that's shimmering just potentially a little brighter now, a little more awakened. And taking another deep breath, let's allow our eyes to open gently and come back into the room. Okay, let's take a deep breath together and let it out. And if you want to do a little movement or a shaking of your head, anything to settle you back down into this space where you're looking at your computer again and connecting again through this mode of technology. Thank you all. The incredible opportunity there for me, and I'm hoping was shared with everyone, was this knowledge that our body holds of the fact that it's already built and already networked so precisely and so elegantly. And oftentimes we're thinking about networks and we are not dropped into the full wholeness of what is already a beautifully, perfectly networked system. Our body as it is here, our connection to the space around us, and ultimately our connection to the earth under our feet. So in that space, what we invite you to do is to see, and this is our time for actually introducing ourselves to one another, but to see what arose in that space on that journey. Is there some word or phrase that you might find you're able to capture that has naturally arisen as you went on the journey? For me, it was a continued sense. My name is Emily Ryan, so I'm going to start. And we're going to go, let's see. I'm going to start at the top of the list, and we'll do a circle. We'll go around. We'll see what word or phrase you would like to use to either describe the experience that you've had or how you're feeling now. And in doing so, we're going to create this circle, this space, which is, of course, also at the same time its own network, connected to all other networks. But this, so we will continue with this journey, going around in the circle. And let me just... Okay.
While Emily's doing that, I want to invite the word quintessence. I want to see if, while you were in that space, if you can come up with a refined way of expressing what you sensed, what you felt, what you experienced, what wisdom came in, what you heard. So see if you can find that in one beautiful word or a short 3-word sentence. And let's see if we can play it in that space together as we introduce ourselves.
Thank you, Jamaica. Okay, so I'll start, and then Jamaica, if you will, I'll pass to you. For me, it was just awareness, awakened awareness.
So my name is Jamaica Stevens, and the quintessence that I pulled through was surrender and trust. Surrender into something much vaster than I am.
Mm-hmm. And I will go through the list as we move down, just as a way of organizing. The next, and it's a little awkward, but we'll stay with it, is a phone number, 503-707-5504, not a name. So I want to go in this order, just to create the coherence. So whose phone number that is, let's go next to you.
This is Jasmine Sage. Two words come to mind. I would say spiraled bioluminescence. I felt this going inward and then coming back outward in this blessing of light in the spiraling fashion.
Thank you, Jasmine. Avery, to you.
I'd say web.
And Barbara Lee?
The word, honestly, that came to for me actually was anxious. Feeling anxious. My name is Barbara Lee.
Thank you. Cassidy?
Connected somewhat. And then there's another one about something.
Cassidy, did you have another person there with you?
Yeah.
Yeah, my name is Andrew Herrera, and one word came to mind was rejuvenation. In the sense when you said to give our mind or our intellect a break. Yeah, that's me.
Thanks, Andrew. And Chris?
The
Chris
one word,
Mendoza.
yeah, Mendoza.
Mendoza, thanks.
The one word that came to mind was renewal.
Thank you. Daniel?
Hi, yes, Daniel De La Rosa. And what came to me is kind of tingling connectedness.
Thank you. M? Em, are you there? You're on mute. Okay, and Julia? I might have lost her. Julia? Hi.
I was feeling actually a bit distracted. Yeah.
Thank you. And Kelly?
I'd have to say, like soothed, kind of like how I was buzzing before, and there's like rain that kind of settled. It was like rain that kind of settled a lot of the high frequency energy that I was buzzing off of. So soothed.
Thank you, Kelly. Kenzie?
She's put hers in the chat. She puts a syncodote, a small part of a larger whole. I don't think I'm saying the word correctly, but a small part of a larger whole. Beautiful.
It is. I like how you said it too, Jamaica, so that's good. Kevin, you're up.
Good morning, Emily. Good morning, everyone. I definitely felt a glistening connectivity.
Beautiful. Mary Soul, you're up. You're next on our circular journey.
Weaving.
Oh, darling, can you say that one more time? Did I hear weaving? I think Mary Soul said weaving.
Yes.
Thank you. And Nayeli?
Hi, yes. I felt a state of inner calm and peace.
Thanks, Nayeli. And Randy?
Still on mute. The mute button's on the bottom left corner.
Thanks, Avery.
Two words, but really one concept that bridge from inner to outer. And the word is reconcile, and the second word is heal. Because I feel we are marinating in conflict, and that is manifesting as inner dis-ease. And we need to reconcile these outer conflicts in order to heal the inner dis-ease.
Thank you, Randy. Suzanne?
Hi, inspired and like electric. The energy was just really going through all of the synapses and just excited to be connected, feeling very connected.
Thank you. And Ted?
Good morning, everyone. That was expansiveness.
Thank you. And Yeshua. Let's see.
He's driving, so maybe not.
Yeah, he might not be able to get off mute. Okay.
Hey, was it my turn?
Yes.
It's your turn.
I'm here. I'm here. This is Yeshua Adonai, and I'd say my word is trust.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Beautiful. I really want to also appreciate those who, first of all, appreciate to share and to be a part of, or to sort of hold the rudder in a process on a networked computer. That is such a heartfelt process, and really drawing forth from it, from within to hold something when I can't feel you or touch you, is an interesting experience, and one that I feel we're getting more and more adept at. And I want to just honor and just say how grateful I am for that. The ability to work with, to work in that space, but also to name those who shared feeling anxious and distracted, and to really honor all of that here in the space. And just to say that for me, there's no hierarchy of importance on experience. So let's just take a moment, a pause, and a deep breath together, and just sort of let that out. And also, as doing so, now that we've heard each other's voices and connected with one another through our quintessence, just to imagine in our moral imaginations, in this magnificent capacity that we have, each other together as a circle and also as a network simultaneously. So, Jamaica, my dear, let's take a moment now and look. We have another 25 minutes or so, just under 25 minutes. And what I would love to do is hear what might be there that wants to be added to this space around biomimicry. A question, intention, or what's there in our group that hasn't potentially been named yet around biomimicry as a subject. So I know we're going to talk a little bit about it, but I just wanted to do a pass and see if there are any questions or anything anyone would like to add into the space at the moment.
Thank you, Miss Emily. Yeah, I think that one thing I will say is that an hour is definitely not enough time. And we are timeless beings, so let's do what we can in this space to enrich, even sparkle a little bit of our curiosity. That is one thing I'll say, is that the spectrum of who's on this call, some of you are conveners, you're networkers, you gather people, and you're part of organizations. Some of you actually may be more in in-depth study of biomimicry. And I like this place where we're converging as a confluence to share different perspectives and intelligences. And that itself is part of what I believe that Emily and I are excited about with this deeper inquiry. One thing that I would appreciate that Emily said is that, and a tone that I want to always remind us, is that biomimicry is currently what it's referred to as, but we've been starting to refer to it as bioreintegration. That we're not only mimicking and emulating nature, we are nature. And there is a deep realignment of what the human actually is, who we are, and what our purpose is on this planet. And as we sort of awaken to that fact, we can both look around us and have that curiosity, that innate sense of sort of noticing these places of where the edges meet, places of these ripe areas for different expressions, and then what emerges from that space. So we can notice that in nature and all these different bioregions and all these different systems and networks and organisms individual of themselves, but then together what they create is a greater complex organism. But we can also look within us. And I think it's really essential to remember that we have this inherent understanding in us. And if we even just notice and learn about our own body and the way that our brain functions and our blood cells functions, our nervous system functions, all these are systems that we can notice and then look at where we naturally see this occurring in nature. And also, where do we see this happening in our organizations, in our work, in our societies, in our communities. I will say that the way that I personally came to this path was not by studying biomimicry. I came to it by noticing and a lot of iterative process, which is also a way that nature works, is iterative process, is you create the condition for an emergence of an experience, you learn, you notice, you adapt, maybe you recycle that which is no longer really serving, and then bring forth the nourishment to try again in a new pattern. It's agility, it's adaptability, it's sensing. It's a way of bringing the order in the chaotic process, the coherence, and yet allowing for there to be chaos. Let there be diversity. Let there be multiple expressions. And yet, how can that function in a system where there's also mutuality and benefit and the continued regeneration of life? And right now, what we're facing is we're looking at systems that aren't really built to regenerate. We're looking at systems that are built to sort of silo and potentially disconnect, but I also want to honor the systems that have been built that are functioning. I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I want to notice how we as humans have created a lot of ingenuity and a lot of innovation over a long time, and that there are things that work. It's amazing. Technology is amazing. The systems we've built and the way they function are amazing. And yet, if we are rigid, right, and these systems become hard, fast, instead of agile and evolving and dynamic and sensing, what we've done is, and what we are doing is running ourselves into end game, essentially. And so here we are at this beautiful precipice of an opportunity to actually evolve past what we've built and retrofit and have an iterative process and sense deeper into our inherent wisdom and watch how nature solves the problems that we've faced by maybe being limited in our perspective and being limited in our experience. And so this is upon us. And so as conveners, I just want to say that these networks are emerging of organizations, of communities, of projects and people who are finding strategies and solutions in ways that are relevant to them, to the people of place or the people of purpose working for a particular intention. And together sharing how we are approaching adaptation and evolution in our organizations, in ourselves, in our decision-making capacities, in our systems, in our products. All of this is a co-sensing and a collective intelligence that when we're not talking to each other, when we're competitive, that we actually create less opportunity for the thrival of all. And we like to use the word cooperation, that we like to drive the sense of competitiveness as it creates ingenuity and innovation. And yet the way that we work together with cooperation, the whole system lifts up because we're co-sensing and we're learning through these iterative processes in the way that different organizations and communities are approaching. And this is part of what we wanted to do today, was bring us into a space where even if all we're doing is modeling for a moment by creating a circle and dropping you into your own inherent wisdom, we've already modeled what a lot of organizations are starting to bring into their work and decision-making is that we can slow down the mind and the logic to sense with other perceptions, to listen to each other's intelligence, and to make decisions together that move us forward more interdependently, versus being independent and siloed and favoring the independent thrival. We are no longer allowed on this planet to consider ourselves independent. And so we are learning together how to be interdependent and how to have healthy flows, healthy flows between us of ways that we sort of sense and send information and send nutrients and send resources back and forth to each other, so that the whole organism can lift up and be thriving. We don't actually get anywhere if there's falling away. We don't actually survive if some people are thriving and some people are not thriving, and some organizations are thriving and not. So that's what I wanted to bring in today.
I think I want to pause. That's beautiful. And really, just to anchor a couple of points and definitions. So first of all, biomimicry is, as I've, the simplest way to take it in, I think, is the sentence that Jamaica said so beautifully, which is that emulating the life solutions to solve human created problems or opportunities. So that is biomimicry in a nutshell. And if anyone else on this, in this circle would like to add to that in a succinct way, but when I share it to those who have never heard the term biomimicry, I basically wrap it up in that way to say that we design the way that nature has designed since the beginning of life, and we learn from biological systems and the inherent wisdom within them, and we connect with that wisdom within ourselves. So just to pause and see if anyone has a question about that, or if anyone wants to add to that as we're here. And you can raise your hand. You have a little option there to raise your hand, or you can just go off mute and speak right into the space.
And Emily, there were 2 questions that were raised.
I see them, yeah.
Oh, perfect. Juice by memory. Levels. Oh, perfect. So how can we reach and influence those who are okay? So these chats are to everyone. Perfect. So I would love, Jamaica, for you to we can share potentially both of these, but the question around the Barbara's question. How do we reach, influence those who are not already in this community or thinking in this mindset?
I'll go ahead and have anyone else go on mute for a minute. There's a little bit of background noise. Thank you. So, gosh, again, you guys, there's so much, so rich here. So much that I would want to offer. What are some working examples of this already working? So, there are already emergent networks that have developed based on relationships. And I think that's the most important thing that I would want to bring into this, if I could try to be succinct. And that is that naturally occurring relationships that are fortified through connections and protocols and agreements that create the mechanism of trust to start sharing these intelligences and start sharing like maybe a little more of the back end of our organizations, maybe actually like becoming more interdependent. It requires a sense of trust. And right now, there's not a common language often. So in answer to your question, Avery, right now, part of the challenge is that some of it is lexicon and translation. And if we are feeling excluded because we aren't necessarily feeling like we understand the language of what's being spoken, then oftentimes it keeps communities and networks and organizations potentially separate. Also that thing about scarcity. Right? So scarcity being a way that people say, well, this is my IP. This is like, I need to have a competitive edge for my organization to flourish. I can't actually work with this other organization, because then I'm not going to have as much. And I want to bring in the trees here in the mycelial network. I think it's essential that actually in tree systems, the fungus, the mycelial mycorrhizal network is actually sending nutrients and sending water and sending support to other layers of the forest. So there's never one tree that you see that isn't networked through this mycorrhizal mat of these, mycelial fungus, sensing and sending energy to other parts of the forest, especially the larger, older trees that send that energy to the young ones coming up. They also can warn of things like disease. They can create adaptation in how they get ready for drought conditions. I'm just trying to give quick examples of the fact that in nature, what we see is cooperative systems, because actually the one tree thrives better when the forest is thriving. And there can be, and I want to name this, there can be in these patterns also, there can be sabotage. There can be ways that certain plant species send certain kind of toxins to actually get rid of other plant species that might come in and be invasive. So I don't want to make it seem like nature's only benevolent and it doesn't have its own gain in mind. And yet mostly what we see in nature, mostly what we see is cooperative patterns. So one thing I think is necessary is we need to start creating a common language and a common way of expressing trust and generosity versus scarcity. We need to start actually seeing and sensing that if certain organizations uplift, that we actually all benefit as a collective ecosystem. I think that we have to find more convening spaces to allow for this kind of dialogue to emerge. Again, an hour doesn't really cut it, but allow for there to be a way that we start dropping the guardedness we have around there's not enough and I need to be scarce, whether it's personally or in our organizations or in our communities and in our businesses, and say, actually, we thrive when we create the capacity for more dynamic interaction points and more systemic engagement, more mutual beneficial relationships. We all actually uplift. So I think there's a culture and consciousness shift that is happening right now that requires that we come back into a sense, and that hoarding and taking of any of these ideas and concepts is no longer a regenerative system. It never was, but we're seeing the end of a cycle of that being possible. So it almost forces us to have a culture and a consciousness shift that has us look to how does nature do this in a way where there's the thrivability of one tree, and yet the forest together is its own ecosystem. So when you ask the question, how do we bring this to other people? I think the answer is in meaningful ways of engagement, in language patterns that are relevant to the person and something intentional and meaningful to them. Meaning we have to learn to translate. We have to learn to find adaptability in how we dialogue and work together, because the way that it works for me is not going to be the same as the way it works for you. Together, how it is that you receive and have a receptive capacity, and how I express, how I have an expressive capacity. And this is something that we have to start practicing. And luckily, we have lots of opportunities. But even the fact that we have a consciousness and an awareness of the fact that these concepts I've just kind of dropped into the space are our duty to work within our own personal life, in our own interpersonal relationships, in our organizations, in our communities. And maybe then we could get to a global scale of the networked approach of shared lexicon, shared translation, shared sense of mutuality. It takes time we may or may not have. And so we're trying to speed up that process by even coming into the collective awareness that we have to make these personal, very personal shifts that will create interpersonal shifts that may then create organizational shifts. Then maybe we can get to the network shifts. So a lot of ideas there, but hopefully some little gem in that sparked a place of thinking about how you can bring this into your work, into your communities, into your networks. And I'll leave that back to Emily.
Avery, the question, the answer that you're proposing, that to this question of stress and managing stress, because it is the key to that is knowing that you are interconnected, is in drawing strength from those around you, is in being willing to not be perfect, and is also in a sense of we are working together to bring out the very best in one another. And rather than compete, and I feel like a great example of a biomimetic approach and networks is the opportunity collaboration, which is something that Avery, you co-founded, correct? No, just Topher founded it.
Topher and Jonathan Lewis.
Topher and Jonathan. So this is one example of, where we notice that convenings are happening now all over the world in a transformative space. How can we come together and learn from one another and share best practices rather than compete with one another in that space? That's one example. I think the mentality of knowing that we are all working together is one of the biggest stress relievers there is. To know that I have your back and you have my back is probably one of the biggest points, and to let go of, again, as you said, Avery, perfection. But I want to pause and see if you want to add anything. I love the event is going to happen one way or another. Leading with trust helps so much, and also being able to feel connected and networked when going into an event rather than feel like you have to reinvent the wheel. You definitely don't. Someone's already been working on it at some level, and it's about having that courage and having that trust.
And this is where I think we see that new models like open source technology actually fundamentally shift the burden of organizing. right? If you are running 12 tracks of content with 12 speakers, all these panels, all these things, there's a lot of, I think, embodied need for control, because people have to show up at a certain place at a certain time, right? And sometimes you can't control if somebody's actually going to be there or not, and that can cause a lot of stress and anxiety. And when you start using techniques like open space technology, which is where it's really about getting the right people in the room and then giving them just enough structure that they can create their experience, it's actually a lot less stressful as the organizer. Because whatever happens is the only thing that could happen, and you can kind of let go of some of that. And we are finding that with groups like Opportunity Collaboration and others, there's a real craving from participants for those kinds of participant-led experiences. If they're investing in flying somewhere or taking a week off work, they don't want to watch something that they could just watch on the computer, right? They want to actually engage with the people around them. And so it is a different design mindset, but I think a very biomimetic one, in the sense that you are letting people self-organize in ways that I think runs pretty counter to the traditional conference structure.
That's great. And I want to highlight the word relationship, that more and more the craving of relationship, exactly as Jamaica was saying, as you were saying, Avery, as all of us, I feel certain, feel that the richness of the human to human encounter and what it what we discover within ourselves and within one another when we just let the space, we create the conditions within which people can fully show up, be fully held, be respected, cared for. We model our events after the way that a natural system would be, would create itself. Diversity is built into a natural system. We don't need an argument for diversity. We just need to say, this is the authentic expression for an event and for a convening. And biomimicry is great because it offers us this incredible tool to refer to, but really what we're tapping into is our own innate inherent wisdom, period. And I feel like when talking to another person or trying to sell this idea of, let's say, open space versus a track, which is sometimes very challenging, really an amazing tool is yourself, is to say, I know, to own the experience. I know that when I am engaged in these kinds of experiences and have been over time, thanks, Randy, appreciate that. When I am engaged in this way, this is what can occur and what actually, I get to whole new levels of wisdom, and my participation grows, which means that my sharing of this experience grows, which means that our marketing grows, so there's some very real, tangible, quantitative outcomes of a qualitative experience. And
I would add to that really quick that to trust the chaotic process. And what we mean by that is that as a convener, I've done a lot of events. Emily's done a lot of events, right? And I know, and when we try to control too much the parameters, I actually think you have inauthentic engagement because there's already an agenda set. And when you actually create a container where you say, we have an outcome, we have a process, we have agreed protocols of how we're going to play together, because that's essential. Not agreements that are binding, but protocols that are ways of building a culture around how we're going to engage each other. And then from that culture, you say, now, in this process, let's leave the space for emergence. Because if we overly script it, we won't be listening to that inherent intelligence that each one of us carries. And it's an alchemy, right? It's an interaction that you cannot pre-script. So when you're gathering people, you can't pre-script how these interactions are going to happen. You can create the conditions, as Emily's saying, and you can create the best container possible that you're still holding the capacity to call people back to the protocols you've set. And yet when you release then and give these time frames to have an alchemical experience, let people interact, as Avery was saying, let there be organic flow, bring it back, collective intelligence, harvest what you learned, redesign. Okay, based on this, what's now relative to you, to the place, to the people, to the experience you're having, great. Go again. And you build iterative process in to give space for there to be actual emergence. I found that those events are much more impactful and create more expression than we could ever possibly get out of a passive, you're listening, I'm speaking, I've already determined what we're going to arrive at, and not allowing the discovery and the curiosity for us to arrive at something I could never imagine. This kind of leaning into diversity and adaptation and an iterative process, and letting the chaotic, letting it get a little messy, to then go, we found a new higher octave of order. We found a new order that wouldn't have been possible without letting the collective intelligences have some space to emerge and interact and find a new calibration, and then go again. And so this feels essential if you're a convener, to really start to play with these. And again, we're out of time. It's 9, but I know that Emily and I have decided we want to do further work in this. We got so inspired by how this felt really alive in us that we want to look to a date later in February. And we really want to invite actually a day-long session in the Bay. I think that we could find a way to Skype some people in for parts of that session. But I think that we want to continue this dialogue, and that we also have a resource list that we're compiling. We'll be sending a survey out at the end of this that asks for your feedback and just gets a sense of giving you a place to express. I know there wasn't as much of that as we would have hoped to really hear the intelligence in the room. But through a survey and through a resource list, we want to have this be an open source resource list. We want the collective intelligence of this group to co-inform each other of books, of websites, of different networks that you've seen, different models and approaches. I think it's essential that we, even in this little community we built over the course of less than an hour, that we share together. What are we learning? What are we discovering? What are you finding? How can we share that? So that'll be a follow-up to this. Just wanted to name those pieces because it feels like, oh my gosh, we've barely touched the surface. And I want your beings, your nervous system to relax into the fact that this is a long, ongoing conversation of which we just sparkled an eyelash of an entire body's worth of potential, and that we want you to continue with us in the journey. So I just want to leave that back to Emily.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. That's perfect. Well wrapped up succinctly of what we will, what our view is, or, where our boat is pointed, to follow up, to deepen, and to just continue to seed more and more conversations, and in doing so, reawaken our own capacities to actually have that deep innate wisdom be the guiding wisdom, that our intellect is in service of that wisdom. That's one of the most important pieces, I feel like, of this whole conversation, just the whole general conversation. And as we said, there are tools. There's a living document that we're going to share and contribute to as like an anchor for this particular group that has come together. We are going to continue to offer and continue to learn and grow and reiterate together, Jamaica and myself and others in this community. I also just want to leave you with, in terms of continuing to re-enliven that sense of being networked and feeling where you are naturally, inherently a network. It will start to grow your own capacity to see networks everywhere and to live into how best to network within your work. So the knowledge and the inherent wisdom within you is going to guide you better than anything else. That's my belief. That's my core belief. And so just to leave that as the final message of the takeaway of today is to begin to have your worldview informed by something like biomimicry, which is an intellectual way of saying to have your being reawaken into the fact that you are the natural world experiencing itself. So where you may see networks now, as you look into the trees and see all of the networks there, as you imagine the mycelium under your feet, as Jamaica so beautifully, shared with us, or the network of opportunity, collaboration, and conveners is happening now. And then the resources that we give you and that you will contribute to, they'll give you a tremendous amount of examples to draw from in your work and in your own personal journey.
Thank you so much, Emily and Jamaica. It's really a pleasure. Thank you to everyone for participating.
Thank you to everyone.
If you've signed up for our newsletter online at our website, conveners.org, we'll be sending out a write-up blog from this experience, kind of summarizing it out. And we can also share any resources that come out from Emily and Jamaica with the group as well. But thank you so much for your time today, and looking forward to seeing you again.
Thank you.
Avery. Thank you
Thanks,
to all.
Avery and Kelly and Ailey and everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Barbara.